The only time we had any indication was the ship that was returned. It got to Israel and it was sent back, and it was a hoo-ha about that. It went on for weeks for a ship full of refugees, Jewish refugees, being turned back from Israel and returned to Germany.
For Honour's Sake is the new podcast from AJEX, the Jewish Military Association, and we're delighted today to be welcomed into the home of annual parade stalwart and veteran Ken Smith. Ken, thank you for having us.
You're very welcome.
We'd love to start, as we always do, at the beginning. You were born and raised in Notting Hill and went to school in Bayswater.
That's right, yes.
And your parents were involved in the Jewish community there?
Yeah, they were married in the Notting Hill shore. And we've lived there ever since. There, and we moved a couple of times, but always in the Notting Hill area.
And so going to school in the 1930s, very different era in some ways. In other ways, perhaps some similarities with now. What was that like, and what was school as an experience for you?
It was a good experience. I didn't learn very much there, although we had experience of anti-Semitism, which was just more or less started in the 30s. And I started school in 1932. And my brother and sister took me, they were older, and they used to take me to school. And the anti-Semitism then was just starting locally. But we managed to escape anything that was big. Quite often we'd have to run very quickly to get away from 3 or 4, usually 3 or 4 Ruffians. So we managed to keep out of trouble.
Well, very glad to hear it. It was, of course, a time of rising anti-Semitism, rising fascism all over the continent and even on our islands as well. And in 1939, that meant the beginning of World War II. You would have been 12 at the time?
Yes, I'd have been 12. And my parents decided that it was best if I was evacuated with the school. In fact, we were spread over 3 villages, of which I had the best billet out of the 3 villages.
Where were those villages?
Wiltshire. I remember sitting in the school hall, and a lady who was one of the volunteers came and said, "I want 2 nice boys for a very nice billet, which will work on, miss." And she took us to a farm, a local farm, and I did have the best billet out of the whole school, because we had an indoor bathroom,
Wow.
which was quite something. And we used to have a bath once a week there, which was marvellous, because we heard that the others didn't have a bath at all, or if they had a bath, it was one of the tin ones. And I was there nearly 2 years.
And did you get experience? Did they get you working on the farm as well? Did you get some experience with that?
Yes, I have good experience, which has lasted me all the way through till now. I still have an experience of milking 4 cows at a time in the morning, and then in the afternoon we used to milk the cows again. And there were about 50 in the herd to be milked. And I remember coming to the farm one day after school, which was a mile and a half from the farm, and we were lucky. If the Great Western Railway used to have a van that daily used to go from the villages, and it happened that he passed the farm, and he used to give us a lift and climb on the back, and he'd drop us at the farm. I remember vividly, I used to come back to the farm and she'd give us tea, and my tea consisted of something on toast. It was delicious, really the finest thing I ever had in my life. Pig's brains. And I should remember that meal to my dying day.
Not so easy to get hold of, especially not around here, I think. But that's you paint the picture there of, I mean, obviously distressing circumstances, but an idyllic couple of years, really. Were you sort of aware of the war going on and how the war was progressing at this point? Was there much news, much awareness?
Yes, it was quite a new one. I remember they have a Daily Express at the time. But one thing that stood out in my mind was when the hood went down.
Right, that's HMS Hood.
HMS Hood. Yep. And there was one survivor. I couldn't believe it. And that stayed in my mind for a long, long time.
So by, I guess, 1941 or so, the Blitz is over, it's safe to return to London, and you came back to Notting Hill?
Yes, I did.
And straight back into school, or were there other things going on?
My school days had finished then, and I was out looking for a job.
And what did you end up doing?
I ended up in the best car place that you could find and working for Rolls-Royce.
Wow. What were you doing for them?
Unfortunately, I didn't work on the cars. They put me on a lathe, and I used to have a piece of emery cloth on a stick, and I would be cleaning the
Like the paintwork or the leather or the
no,
windows?
we were on the engines, and I was cleaning just trying to recall what it was.
It was like the engine parts,
Yes, it was.
like the carburettor or the...
It was the camshaft,
Ah, the camshaft, right.
and on the camshaft there were nodules that the valves were turned on, and they used to get quite corroded, and they came in every day from the airfields, and we put the engine together
So these were for the aircraft.
for the aircraft. Yeah.
So already making a contribution to the war effort. Quite a vital one, it sounds like, as well.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah. And where was the rest of the family at this point? Some of them must have been mobilised, some of them were away, some of them were already serving?
Well, my brother was in ARP until his age group came up to go into the RAF. And my sister was on war work of some sort.
And as the war progressed, you became more involved as well. You could see your age group coming up, and there were going to be opportunities for you too.
Yes, by the time I was the age to leave the school, we were already on the winning side. Although war took a lot longer, didn't finish till 45, but. I suppose, in a way, I did my bit.
And what was that? How did you? So what were you doing by the end of the war?
By the end of the war, in 1943, I decided, and my friend Johnny, he worked for Gainsborough in films, and I couldn't get in there, so I went to Riverside Studios, and I went there 6 times for a job. And the commissioner said, "Hello, son, you here again?" I said, "Well, I would like to get a job with this one going." So he said, "Well, just hang on for a moment, one moment," and he called the studio manager down. And the studio manager said, "Well, as a matter of fact, we do have a vacancy which is just occurred." I said, "Well, I'll do anything but you like." And he said, "I'm afraid it starts in his T-boy." I said, "Well, that would suit me. Thank you very much, sir." He said, "Well, we don't say sir to anybody here. It's all first name." And I became in the studio for, I believe, 2.5 years, something like that, and until I volunteered for the army.
So 1945, volunteered for the army, and was that straight into the 4th Queen's Own Hussars?
No, I did 6 weeks at the tank training place in Wareham, and from there we went to the infamous Catterick, and I was a Catterick for about 3 months.
So that would have been your basic training, infantry
Basic
training. Yeah.
And then we heard we were being shipped out to somewhere or other, we didn't know where, and finished up in Italy.
And so what point, so that was the war over by then, or was the war still going?
No, the war was over by then. The war was over in January, I think, or a bit later.
A bit later, yeah. May 1945. There was victory in Europe. There was still going on in Japan, but yeah.
Yeah, and we were still in the camp. They said, "But don't get too excited because we're going to train you now to go out to." War was still on there, and you'll be shipped out to Asia. So we carried on there, and I was very lucky. I finished up being on detail for Italy.
And what was the role? What was the job in Italy?
In Italy, we went through. I remember like it was yesterday. We were shipped to a place called Novara, and from there we were taken down to the regiment, and the regiment was somewhere not Udine, it was further down Italy than that, and I think there were three of us, replacement ones, and we put him on what was then the 4th Hussars. They had tanks, and that began for the rest of my time there. I served in Italy, and then we moved to Germany.
And this would have been the 2-3 years of your national service. How long did you serve for?
In all 4 years.
And the rest of the time was in Germany itself?
Yes.
Whereabouts in Germany were you?
Lübeck.
Lübeck, okay. And so this, of course, was the beginning of the Cold War. Germany was divided. Berlin was divided. Did you get much experience of those changes in the country and the world?
No, because we were too far away from Hamburg, where a lot of it took place, and we just only knew by the papers what was going on. We were shipping coal and everything that went in by plane.
And what was the role of the Hussars in Lübeck at that time? Were you patrolling? Were you working with civilians?
We were just occupying force, and we had nothing to do with civilians, really, except for the odd one.
And how did it feel being a young Jewish soldier in what had been Nazi Germany until quite recently at that time?
I never met a Nazi. All the time I was in Germany, I was there for 9 months. I never met a Nazi. They were all perfect.
And did you get a sense of the Jewish community returning? Were there opportunities for you to sort of practice or observe in any way at that time?
The only time we had any indication was the ship that was returned. It got to Israel, and it was sent back, and it was a hoo-ha about that. It went on for weeks for a ship full of refugees, Jewish refugees, being turned back from Israel and returned to Germany. I don't know whether you knew that.
Well, I know there was certainly many stories, I think, of the Jewish refugees being turned away from Mandate Palestine. Yeah. I can't say it off the top of my head. I don't remember the one which came all the way back to Germany, but I think it was a familiar story at the time. Many ending up in Cyprus and places like that, waiting to try and get their refugees to the coast and that sort of that sort of operation that was going on. Certainly. So for 9 months you were in Germany and Lubeck, and that did that bring you up to the end of your service, or were you, what happened after that?
No, I came back. I came back 3 months before demob, and the sergeant major, who was a Welshman, and he wasn't very keen on Jews, and he said, Smith, I got a good job for you. I thought, well, I can imagine. So he said, you do your last 3 months in the cookhouse. Well, that was the best turn ever given. Bacon come out of my ears and 2 eggs for breakfast. Oh,
I'm going to say, rationing was still going on, so this is a real luxury.
Yeah, it was.
And once you'd demobbed, was it back to London? Was it back to Notting Hill? Back to work?
Back to Notting Hill.
And were you straight into work, or was it difficult to find work and get back into civilian life after?
It was a little bit difficult because thousands being demobbed, all trying to find their own thing to do, and I finished up in Rolls Royce, and that was I was there for about a year. And a very good friend of mine, he worked for Gainsborough. And I said, Johnny, can you get me into Gainsborough? He said, I can't. He said, whatever I do, I can't get you there. We're full, right up. I finished up going to Riverside 6 times and finished up as T-boy. And I've enjoyed my life there because from T-boy I became a film loader, and then I became clapper boy, and clapper boy I became a focus puller.
And do you remember any of the films that you worked on?
Yes, A Small Voice.
And did you get to meet any stars? Did you get to meet any of the film stars and the actors and actresses?
I used to meet them because I stand next to them for 10 minutes, waiting for something or other, and I met
James Mason.
Oh, James Mason. He was lovely.
Okay, thank you. Ken's son Adam's actually helping us out today. And again, thank you for having us too. You've just passed me actually some of the DVDs of some of the films that you worked on. Small Voice, as you mentioned, the Frank Randall films, the comedies, wonderful, very much like the Ealing comedies, I believe. And The Seventh Veil with James Mason, a very famous film with again Anne Todd and Herbert Lom and Hugh McDermott. So very auspicious casting as well. So it must have been an exciting place to work.
It was very exciting, and you say, did you meet people? We were all part of a family, really. I remember when I was a focus puller, I had to run the tape out from the camera to where they were. And I'd say, Mr. Mason or whoever, Howard Keel, who became quite famous voice from Hollywood. They were so nice. They were very, very family orientated, really.
And so you rose up through the ranks to focus puller again, very technical, very important role as well. Yeah. And was that a career that you then built on after that?
We volunteered for the army. because the war was still going.
Okay, so that's before the army, and then after the army, then when you came back, was it back into film production, or was it a different role?
No, I went back to the studio. I said, like, I'm back. And he said, oh yes. What is it you want? I said, well, my old job back. Because in those days, the law said you had to go back for 6 months. They had to take you back. So I said, well, you got work for a focus puller. He said, unfortunately not, because the whole industry had gone down and down. It was in a terrible state for about a year. And I couldn't get my old job back. So I finished up then doing little bits like on location. And in the end, it was no good. I said, well, I had to get a job. And I came out of the industry.
So what year was that when you were sort of finally out of that industry?
1950s. Because the war was over in 45.
Sure.
And I came out after 4 years.
Yeah, so 49.50, yeah. It's getting better. And so what happened next with your career? What sort of things did you look at doing?
In the film industry, it was movies, but I had a friend who was a photographer, and he said, why don't you come in with me? So I did, and I became what you should call a smudge. And I did various. At Christmas time we took the kids for Father's Christmas. Other times I was on the other white, and I did I had a spot there at Allen Bay. I worked for summer there doing a smudge there. Did that for a year. What did I do after that? And I came back out of work. And my dad said, well, I want someone. So I went into the valet service. And I had quite an experience there. It was Notting Hill. We were based in Notting Hill. And I used to run a van around and never call anyone before 3 o'clock. How long did I do that for? Oh, a couple of years. And then I met my first wife.
How did you meet?
Through the club, West London Jewish Youth Club. It was well known, and we had a lot of well-known people there. And it was just every evening we went down there, table tennis, the usual bit. Frank Sinatra had just started, and they played nothing else but Sinatra records, and it was quite good. I was there for a couple of years. We used to go down there, and I became friendly with my first wife, Sonia, and got married eventually in Chelmsford Shore.
And what year? Do you know what year that would have been?
Had to help me out, Adam.
1958. 58.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam. So 1958, and then they begin settling down, family, and everything else.
At the time, I was still helping my dad, and eventually I got married to Sonia, who was a hairdresser, and she said, "Well, what are we going to do? You're working for your dad, which didn't bring in very much. Why don't we look for a shop and turn it into a hairdresser's?" And 3 doors from where my father had a shop, there was a shop there, which was used by a news agent. I knew the manager very well. So I said, "What's happening with the shop next door?" He said, "Don't ask me." He said, "But they don't know what to do with it." He said, "I'm here in this shop." He said, "That one, I don't know." "Why?" I said, "Well, I'm interested." "Oh," he said, "interested? I'll ring the head office." I rang them and they said, "Well, today's Monday. How about Wednesday? Someone come down and see you." Came down and he said, "You want the shop?" So I said, "Well, I wouldn't mind. It's a good position." He said, "Well, we want premium." My heart sank. I said, "Well, how much would it be?" He said, "Quite a lot." Well, £200 was a fortune then. So I said, "Well, I think I can manage it." He had to give me a day or two. So I went to the bank manager and I said, blah, 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 blah. He said, "Well, I can give you for £200. He said, on percentage, whatever it was. And I said, "All right." Told the firm, "I'll take the shop." Took the shop. Had to fit the shop out. Fit the hairdressers out. Even then, I think it was £2,000. Well, as it happens, Sonia's dad was a hairdresser in Ealing. So I said, "Dad, I've got a shop. I've got the money." He said, "You're asking to find one. I haven't got the rent." So I punted around and finished up. I wanted the last few bob I couldn't raise. I wanted about £50. I put my watch into the kitty, and anyway, we got the shop, fitted it out, and that's how we started.
Yeah. And how long did you have the shop for?
But we still got a shop.
Oh, well, there you go.
It was very good.
And throughout this time, were you already involved in AJEX and coming on the parades?
Yep. I think it was a bit after that I started parades.
I think you started going in the 70s, didn't you? When was the first time you went?
Yeah.
When was the first time you went to a parade? I think it was in the 70s because I think you went to someone else initially.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think it was about 3 or 4 years I had the shop, and my cousin phoned me. He said, "I got a shop. Are you interested?" I went there to see the shop, and it was massive. It was a big shop, a huge basement. So I thanked her very much. And that night I spoke to my wife. She said, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "Open it up as a second." And it was beautiful, beautiful shop.
building your business empire at about the same time. As Adam mentioned, do you think you started going on the AJEX parades for the first time in the 1970s?
It might have been a little bit before that.
Oh,
I think
before that.
Yeah. Because they were quite the occasion in those days. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people, sometimes royalty as the reviewing officer as well. Do you have any particular memories of those occasions and the people you were with and who you met?
Well, I said to Johnny, because Johnny was a very, very good friend, I said, have you been to the AJEX? He said, no. Why don't we go? I said, well, let's make a point, and we started to go together up there.
But you've been almost every year since. We were talking before. I think there's perhaps one or two you've missed, and of course we all missed it during COVID as well. But you're obviously one of our most long-standing veterans now, and as we said in the introduction, a very regular attender at the parades. One that I think people are always looking out for with Adam as well. And I know that I do too. So to mark that, and indeed say thank you for today and for having us and for talking to us, I wanted to present you with the AJEX plaque. Just to say thank you very much, and indeed to mark the incredible contribution that you've made, not only as a national serviceman but as an AJEX member as well. I think it's fair to say that it's been a captain's innings for your community and your country. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.